Today we're going to be turning this long function into this, all on one line. Now before you jump into the comments and tell me that this is horrible and unreadable, I'm not suggesting that putting all your code on one line is better, but it's different. And that's the key here. Being able to transform your code from one version into a different version is a key skill when you're learning to refactor. And being able to refactor your code will make you a better developer. So let's talk a bit about refactoring first. Refactoring is a bit like tending to a bonsai tree. As the tree grows, you make targeted and careful alterations to the branches by snipping things off as they grow, and you can direct the shape the tree will grow into. And the goal of this is to end up with a neat and well-rounded and well-balanced final product. A true bonsai artist will be able to maintain an elegant and neat structure to the tree as it slowly grows over time. And this is what you want to be with your code base. You want to be a code artist making small tweaks to your code base as it grows in order to keep it neat and elegant and accessible to other engineers that might have to work on it in the future. So I have other videos on my channel for tips on how you can practice refactoring. Please like and subscribe. But today we're going to focus specifically on structured arrays of data. If you look back into this original code, you can see this function is working on an array. So we've got an array coming into the function here, and then we're executing a for loop on the array here. Inside that for loop, we've got this conditional logic. So that's saying only continue iterating on objects where this subject property is set to this value. And then if that condition is true, we can add the value here to the total, which is in this variable that we declared at the start of the function. Once we've got a total, we are doing a bit more logic down here at the bottom, and then we're returning an integer from the function. Now this is what's called procedural logic. The function is one long procedure that executes from top to bottom, because that's how code runs. But there are other ways that we can do these operations. So for example, we don't have to do an if statement in here. If we wanted to, we could take advantage of the filter function in JavaScript. The filter function is an array method that acts on every item in an array, and it returns a new array with some of the items filtered out. So let's start off by creating a new version of this average math grade function, and we'll just call it getAverageMathGrade A, and we're taking the same student array that we had before. So instead of doing this if statement inside here, what we can do is use array.filter. So we'll create a new constant, we'll call it mathsonly, and we'll do students.filter. And inside that, we'll do the if statement. So we're saying subject equals math. What that gives us is it gives us a smaller version of the array with some of those values filtered out. The rest of this function we can just write out as it was before. So do the count, then we do the for loop like happened before. This time we're using the maths only array. Adding it to the total and up in the count and returning. If count is greater than 0, return the total divided by the count, otherwise return 0. So that's the averaging function here. So what we've done here is we reduce this a little bit by removing the if statement and using a filter statement. So next, let's try and replace some of this down here, which is essentially creating a total grade. We can do all that using the array reduce function. So we delete all this and we're going to use a reduce function. Now the reduce function is a JavaScript array prototype function that takes an array and returns a smaller value from that array. So for example, that could be just one number, or it could be a smaller object with different properties and things like that. In this case, we're going to be returning just the count from that reduced function, and we're going to be putting the average into it as well. So we can create a new constant and we'll call it count, and then we'll do mathsonly.reduce, and in here we've got a, b, I, and the array. So let me just talk you through what we've got here. If I open up IntelliSense on the start of this reduce function, you can see the parameters we've got in. It takes previous value and then current value, and then the current index and then the array as it's going through. You've always got a variable, the value of the array there. So what we're doing inside this reducer is we're saying the previous value, which will be a number, added to the current value, which will be an object. So we want the grade property from that current value, and then divide it by the array.length. So what this is going to do is, as the reduce function iterates over our array, it's going to be appending to that value, which is a, so the result will get added to the grade divided by the length of the array. So we're adding up all the averages. That actually should say average. And then we're going to return that from the function, so we can return average. There we go. So the next thing to do is we've got a couple of superfluous variables here. Maths only is only being used once. It's only being used to pipe the value into the reducer. And we don't actually need to do that. It's quite good for readability, but it's sort of a little bit superfluous. We could actually just do students.filter. So we could return students.filter and then just immediately go down and do .reduce. So instead of creating two values, we're basically just returning the result of the filter and then we're doing reduce on it. So we're getting closer to one line here. We've reduced the whole for statement and the ifs and everything into a filter and then a reduce. And we can really just turn this into one line by using a arrow function here. So if we just did this, remove the return statement and turn this into a constant, then we've got our function all on one line. I can actually execute this onto one line like this if you really want to. But there. So this is our function, get average maths grade A. It's going to do students.filter. Filter takes out the subject, and then reduce does the averaging function here. Now this is just one of the many ways you can change your procedural code to be more functional and to reduce the amount of complexity inside your functions. Next up, you should watch this video where I take some code that was written using object-oriented principles and refactor it to use pure functions. Again, the purpose of this is to give you some exercises to practice refactoring and to better understand different ways you can write your code. So go and check that out and I'll see you in that video.